Okay, hey there. I'm Pseudo. This is Selfear,
Hey.
and we're gonna be giving unsolicited opinions on balance changes. So, yeah, patch came out yesterday. I don't know how relevant any of this is gonna be because we were talking a little bit before the stream, and a lot of this stuff, whatever opinions that we end up coming up with, are immediately going to be dwarfed by whatever some uh, clever magician comes up with for PvP World versus World or PvE. But we can go through some of our thoughts and stuff. We're talking about like PvP changes, and I guess we'll start it off with one of we'll go through our hot takes. I forced him against his will to come up with a couple for this game, and you want to share what your last one was?
Yeah, I was just saying that I would love to see a quickness and alacrity nerf across the board throughout the game, like the way the base boon works. Because I think it promotes how do I say it? Well, in PvP it can be game breaking in a lot of ways. Like you saw Herald had quickness a couple patches ago, and it was just terrifying as a result. And now Chronomancer is bringing alacrity in kind of a 1v1, 2v2 scenario, and I think that has the potential to be just stupid. And obviously in PvE, it is weird. You said this, but in PvE, like now that Harvest Temple is the limit for DPS, it's really hard to make a big change. But other than Harvest Temple, I would love to see DPS brought down across the board.
Yeah, it'd be weird.
Make a little healthier game, you know?
Just completely unsolicited fixes that have no relevance on anything that can make like you do more damage on Harvest Temple or something. Just like
Yeah.
the fights that need it. Hey, go talk to this buff and you get 10% damage boost or something.
Mm.
But yeah, going back to that, so it's interesting. And actually, now that you mention it like that, I guess I'll rephrase my thought that I was coming up with because I pointed out that Tempest can bring alacrity. Um, the reason I don't like the Tempest can bring alacrity, especially in World versus World, is not that it's super powerful, because honestly, I like really powerful stuff, especially building around it. I don't like it because it completely trivializes, uh, like Hardened Conduit or whatever it is, the other Grandmaster that they can take that lowers their time to attune to an element, lowers their time to achieve Singularity, which is what basically is called when you can use your Overload.
Hmm.
um, because Alacrity does the same thing. It's actually better because it's just in a group. So,
Mm.
and because it's 7 seconds, there's no, like, other than the 7% damage increase in PvP at least, and they are differentiating traits a little bit now. There's no reason you would take, like, I don't know, I'm just gonna call it Hardened Conduit, because
Yeah, I'm pulling it up. I have to remember what it's actually called.
Alacrity affects attunement cooled swapping cooldowns, which is also weird. And I'm just obviously I'm a biased warrior player, but it doesn't affect things like warrior, like weapon swap cooldowns on Bladesworn. Um, so I don't know if a Tempest are gonna get affected by that. Why doesn't warrior? But that's or Revenant swaps for that matter. But that's me, clearly being biased. Um, I don't know. I don't know if they could do that. I'm just gonna say my three hot takes because I wanted us to come up with these just because it sort of introduces the people who haven't been like following along with me ranting about Warrior literally every time I stream. Sort of like it'll give you a little bit of introduction onto like our balance philosophies or like what we think about the game. Don't worry, I'm not biased, I swear. So my first one that I gave to him as an example was I think Selly is ruining build crafting because it is so overpowered. And the reason I think that is not because I would like to see Selly evaporate for the game or it reverted to its original form, just base. I would like to see there be an option for OG Selly, but the reason it's overpowered is because they added concentration and expertise to it without nerfing any of the stat values. If they made like Celestial, for example, give something like all of the stats that it does give, but without concentration and expertise, and introduced like a new, I don't know what they could call it, almighty stat that gave a reduced amount of concentration and expertise, which are arguably the two best stats in the game, at least in terms of like PvE content, then I would be okay with that. But because it literally gives 6,200 stat points, I should probably truncate this, compared to the 3,600 stat points that you get from a full statted Ascended 3 stat set, that's more than double like the power that's going into a class that can fully utilize those. So whenever you're looking at like how do I play this Condi build specifically, or even how do I fill out this other build with like extra pieces of whatever, it's a no-brainer. There's no min-maxing. You just take Celestial Gear because it's stupid.
Yeah. But I mean, that's an interesting take. The concentration expertise, I hadn't thought about that. It also like pushes it over the edge in PvE for some builds. Well, I mean, maybe less so now that they nerfed Celebrand.
Well, Celi Revenant was it was like 27k on Snowcrows forever and could also heal. It was just what you took in Fractals.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw this. I mean, but Teapot put out a video where he and his raid, they all raided in full Celi.
Yeah, it's dumb. It's like,
yeah, it is kind of dumb.
That was my solution as soon as they made it. I was just like, why doesn't everyone just run full Celi and you're not going to do any damage?
It is kind of the way the game was meant to be played in some silly way. You know what I mean?
It's interesting because they give it as default level 80 level up gear now. They changed all of the classes to just, and that's honestly why I think they added concentration expertise to it, was so they could just make it the default level 80 gear so you could clear content with it in exotics.
Yeah.
It actually gives you a Celi Aqua Breather that I tell people not to throw away because it's like one of the few ways to get a level 80 Aqua Breather that's Celestial. That's not like really annoying. So I'm like, keep that. Just side note. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. One of my other hot takes is going more into balance just in general. And first off, I don't want this to be like I'm making fun of their balance team or complaining about it in any way, even pre-End of Dragons, because I am fully aware that COVID and a lot of other things put them in a position, especially where they were with Icebrood Saga and the back and forth they have to do with NCSoft. Wow, I haven't even brought up the new balance patch. Anyway, so like it put them in a position where they had to get the new expansion out or you don't have jobs.
Yeah.
And I'm also pretty sure that they were fully aware that if they sold X copies, which I want to just say is 100,000, as a random number of End of Dragons, they would get a 4th expansion guaranteed and probably get a Guild Wars 3. Or at least get Guild Wars 3 development started. So I completely forgive whatever your job is right now, ignore that, get this expansion out. And I think it did really well for getting new people into the game.
Oh, I mean, they saved the game, for sure.
Yeah.
I think there was a very real possibility that Guild Wars was ending as a game.
Well, the story was ending.
Yeah. And I think there's actually now a future for the game.
I definitely agree. I mean, the game's great. They've been clearly building toward that forever. Like with Alliances and DirectX 11, I don't think they would have put that much effort into those things if they weren't.
Yeah, well, Alliances win, though. I feel like once Alliances come out, the game is like sort of complete in some way.
We'll see.
I don't know how to word that.
It could save World vs. World and it could kill it. I was thinking about that today. I was like, wait, what if this is just bad? Everyone hates it. Like, maybe people like just having... I mean, they could just revert it, right? Maybe. But, like, maybe people like just having servers and not having to think about or argue about alliances. Who knows?
But I do think if you're an unallianced player, you can still hop on and do,
or an unallianced
just mess
guild.
around. Yeah, I think so.
That's a separate topic purely for later. But like, it's interesting that they had to go into get the game out, or you don't have jobs mode, and then they were also like, okay, here's a little bit more communication now post End of Dragons, and they could sort of afford to allow people more communication and stuff, like just internally as well. So I understand that. I understand not wanting to like promise things they couldn't deliver, because that always happens in the past, and then people are like, hey, you promised this, where is it? Sorry, I'm fighting a Revenant. He actually knows what he's doing. I wasn't counting on him being A here or B.
Totally unrelated.
Yeah.
Really hot thing that I'm doing right now.
No, go.
It's potentially HTCM is bugged right now and it's giving for normal mode.
Great. So
Which
let me know.
Yeah.
I'll run that.
One of my
later.
friends messaged me and said, "Come do this now."
Oh, do you have to do you activate it and then deactivate it or something?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So we'll see if it actually. It would feel a little cheap to get the title this way.
Yo, you're not allowed to bitch out of my raid group after this.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually do
it
have
the normal way.
I
It
do
would
have
be
extra
fun.
people if you have to, but like it's Now let me know.
No, this would be the lamest way to get this.
A lot of fights were like that. Doom CM had a bunch of ways that you could like crack it on day one. You used to be able to literally damage Doom while he was sitting on his throne with burning, and it just
Oh,
wouldn't show
wow.
up, and you would just auto attack him with like a Guardian Scepter, and then just kill him. And when he spawned, it was the cheapest way to do it. There's
Yeah,
been
you
lots
hate
of
to
stuff
see
like
it.
that. I'm not gonna say don't do it. I'm just gonna say, you know, maybe don't put a post on Reddit and get banned for it.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. This guy's running the F away from me. Fine. You go to your. Oh, the tome. Well, I just learned that the tome icons have a red icon now. What tome is on? You're in. Anyway.
Oh, interesting. Nice.
Yeah, it's like kind of like, hey, this guy has these tome, or is in this tome? I don't know.
Like an enemy you're facing?
Yeah, I was fighting it. Maybe it's just.
Oh.
I'll have to like look at his bargain. He ran into his face. Anyway, so my second hot take that I can't clearly multitask and say is that I have utmost respect, especially for Cal and whoever, you know, everyone else on their balance team. Shout out to you guys for doing God's work, for suffering through this stuff. Especially when you're not, you know, you're getting yelled at and you're not allowed to make the changes you want to, or you're not allowed to make the changes you want to because you're fixing everything else on this, you know, not sinking ship, but like at least leaking 10-year-old boat of a game. That's amazing. When they started homogenizing a lot, you know, they took away warrior specific or class specific buffs. When they made it, you know, so that this gives quickness, this gives alacrity, this gives this gives whatever. My immediate reaction to that was, okay, I'm not gonna really dislike this because I want class specific buffs per se. I think I'm going to dislike this because I don't believe that their balance cadence is going to afford them the ability to make everything balanced. What I mean by that is that, say, like, just out of the blue, as random examples, like Firebrand and Scrapper, right? They both give quickness. If Firebrand can give quickness and does, you know, 30k, and Scrapper can give quickness and does, like, 4,000 damage a second.
Yeah, how do you differentiate when you bring one?
Right, one is demonstrably better, and that's the problem I have with their balance cadences. I just don't think it's possible. I'd love it to. I mean, if they can pull this off, more power to them. I'm glad they did this instead of curing cancer. But like, I don't think that their balance cadence affords them the ability to balance things across the game like that. And there's always going to be a best in slot. Like you saw today, Firebrand got changed. It might be better. It might be better. You know, it might be worse. Who knows? But if it is worse, then you just take the other thing. Like, Quickness Scrapper was already doing like 35k and giving quickness with like minimal spec into actual boon duration, right? Like,
well, just to stop you real quick, I think this is like a sort of flawed way to think about it, right? Because I understand like I understand the argument, especially when it comes to DPS, right? You're like, oh, if we're speedrunning and you're purely a DPS class, why would you pick something that does less DPS, right? But I do think in the case of supports and healers, variety is still interesting and valuable, right? Like if they made Guardian the quickness support that is more focused on stability, like say you're in a fight that wants heavy stability, like Guardian becomes slightly better. Or if you're in a fight that...
Okay, so you're saying it's fight specific more about what you do.
I think that's okay as a balance design, right? Like, and as long as they do roughly similar DPS, I think that's also okay. I think the problem is when something's like egregiously out of place, right? Like, and I mean, Guardian's a good example. Like, if Guardian does like way too much DPS and is also if they're the highest quickness DPS provider and they have the most utility, that's when it's problematic.
Well, it's holes and rolls, which is what Cal was talking about, where
exactly,
you can't do everything. So I will buy that purely because you actually counted, and I didn't expect you to. You countered the second point I was going to bring up, where it's not just... To me, it's not just about DPS. The problem I have with Mechanist being just the best, arguably, at everything, is that Mechanist... It's not a damage thing. I could care less if Mechanist... Or I couldn't care less if Mechanist can do like 30k and heal and, you know, provide alacrity with 3 buttons. I really don't care, and I think there has to be something accessible. It's especially as a guild recruiter, maybe not top, but accessible for people to play while they're learning the game. That being said,
sorry, keep going.
Well, that's a separate issue. The problem I have with Mechanist, and I would like to see them sort of change this up, and I definitely think they could with things like Druid, is Mechanist mechanically is so much better at healing or providing alacrity while it's doing
Other
damage
things.
or mechanics, because you can just leave your golem on the group and run away.
Yeah.
And they sort of addressed this today, and this will be a good segue maybe into us actually talking about the patch from yesterday. But like, they made it so that Mechanist halves its values when it's away from its golem more than I think 360 range for 6 seconds, which I think is an okay compromise.
Ooh, okay. We can talk about that.
I think that if they're going to move toward you just being able to essentially place a boon bot or a healing bot on the group, or a barrier bot, or whatever you're going to call it, things like Scourge, things like Druid that already have placeables, even Warrior Banners maybe, have the potential to do that, but you need to do things like change the Alacrity Pulse around Druid to be around the pet, not about the spirits, or around the spirits where you place them, not around the spirits, like having it teleport to you. Because the reason this comes up not mostly, but like, I geared a Druid. I was gearing all these things out because we were doing Harvest Temple and I wanted to have them ready. And Tempest needs to overload in order to provide alacrity. It's a lot of alacrity, but you're not doing anything else while you're overloading, and if you have to stop to res somebody or anything else, you don't get the alacrity. And you have to finish the overload. And while it's only 2 seconds with quickness, that's still a long time. Druid, the spirits teleport to you and then provide it around the spirit. I'm like, and I've tried to do just base fights, and the Anka one, where the junkyard, where you're just running between different places, your spirits just die. Like, and then they're on cooldown. It's like, okay, or I could play Mechanist, where it just, the golem follows me and isn't dead and doesn't need to be resummoned, and I can press 2 buttons and give the group mechanics or alacrity while I take this, mechanic off the group, right?
Well, I mean, I think this speaks to a greater problem, right? Like, in that, well, and they talked about this in their balanced philosophy, is that, like, giving some boons on some classes is fun, and on some it's not, right? Like, Mechanist is a great example, right? Where it's in your auto attack chain, it's in a single button, right? Like, that's all you have to focus to provide to do your role, right? And then you'll look, I mean, to talk about the balance patch, like Quick Herald, which I think is insane now. I think it was already insane before, and now it's like truly busted. But you have to give up your stun break, your heal. It's less. I mean, I still like it because I really love Revenant, but it's less fluid. It's less fun. It's much messier. Like, it's like they wanted to say, we want Revenant to be able to give quickness, and they just shoved it on, without really thinking of how to make it fun.
I don't think that patch was about fun. I think that patch was about they do a lot of groundwork patches, and then they, at least in my experience, may or may not follow them up with stuff. Because their pipeline is like 3 months long, and things like COVID and get End of Dragons out, or else you don't have jobs happens. Yeah, I don't know. I'm always interested in what ends up on the cutting room floor of both movies and like games I play. Where it's like, oh, we had this planned for the story, or oh, we had this planned in like 8 balance patches, but didn't get to it and had to change direction. The removing trade-offs thing is a big thing. Like, what was the trade-off gonna be for Firebrand? Like, you can only have 1 book. That's what I wanted forever. Or you had to spec into all 3 and give up all your trades. So like, I don't know. And they kind of did that with Firebrand. So let's talk. I mean, I want to. Maybe we'll come back to it, but I want you to give a second hot take. But we can talk about the patch.
Yeah, should we go class by class? Is that the easiest way to do it?
Sure, I'm gonna.
Or is that a boring way to do this?
I don't know. Let's go bottom to top. Since everyone else is probably doing top to bottom. I'm gonna stop fighting Sand Lions and start trying to take a Condi Tower with a Condi class.
Yeah, you'll be happy to know also that the CM title does not work this way. It's not bugged.
I'm ambivalent on that. Like, I was really actually very excited when the Invuln thing worked, because I'm a big fan of people using things. I mean, obviously I told you a little bit about me, like, just playing the worst things in the world and trying to get them to work, right? I'm a big fan of them using mechanics that they didn't think of to do things in unintended ways.
No, I'm talking about a bug, though.
I know, but like,
right.
Remember when you could, I don't know if you saw on CM or Harvest Temple CM,
the Sylvari tech.
Well, it wasn't just Sylvari. We figured it out, like, everything has enough invulns to do it. You didn't have to be a Sylvari, except for Necromancer, because they don't get invulns. So if you lined up all your crap, or if you lined up all your crap and were a Sylvari, it wasn't just that one skill, it was anything that gave it true invuln, right? Surprise, surprise, Mesmer was the best, because they had 2, but anyway. I didn't expect them to actually change it, and the only reason I will buy that it was okay for them to do that was this is supposed to be the hardest fight in the game.
Yeah. Well, I think they also don't want to make people ever feel bad for not picking a certain race, right? Like, I think, that's like a pretty core design.
But again, you could do it without being a Sylvari. That was
Yeah.
my argument. I think they either should have just fixed the Sylvari thing, or exactly had this argument once that they could make. Because you can't make that argument again. Not that they have to justify that there are idiots like me, but, it's... I don't buy if another raid comes out and you can involve through something and they, and it's not like, okay, the Void Dragon plus and the world's ending again. Like, that they change it again. Because to me as a player, that was clever, and that was a workaround to a mechanic on an already hard fight that people came up with. There's lots of stuff that people have figured out in raids that they, in quotes, don't matter anymore since then.
Sure.
There's lots of mechanics you don't even see. Just doing enough damage on Keep Construct makes you never see the split phase where you have to kill like half the phases in the fight. So and that's just how the fight's done now. You don't do the Gorseval up drafts anymore. You just don't break the boss. So I don't know. But transient to that, let's go while I sit in Air Keep, let's go through these notes here. Actually zoom into this. Alright, so let's go to the bottom. I actually do have thoughts on the warrior changes, even though there's like 3 of them. So warriors first. Handful of warrior skill trait bonuses will be applied to distant defiant foes. We also made them adjust and improve berserk damage. Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna read all these. 16 issue Bloody Roar bonus damage. Finally, thank you God. And making Outrage Berserk extension more reliable, headbutt no longer removes stability. So they're cleaning up a lot of the issues that people sort of had, residual issues with them fixing Berserker, which also was going to be, I don't want to say a big undertaking, but a big undertaking for them, since I'm pretty sure no one on their balance team actually plays Warrior. And Warrior's this kind of weird thing, just because, so I get this rant out of the way, where it has 1 star on the like, they added the star system to a class select now, and Engineer has 5 stars, Warrior has 1. But the meta builds for these actually...
Are the exact opposite.
Yeah, they kind of require this, like, intrinsic understanding of Warrior, which actually has a lot of traits that interact, and I'm not saying Engineer doesn't, but Mechanist, both of the builds can be played with, like, 3 buttons because it has an accessibility build. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I really wish they had done an elite spec specific thing. I wonder why they didn't. They don't even.
Why they
when you create a character, they don't even list the elite specs, right?
No.
Yeah, I wish they had done.
You don't have to
for them.
You don't have to have the expansion to create a character.
Yeah.
That's why they didn't do it. But I don't know. So they fixed a bunch of like Defiant stuff. Here's Merciless Hammer bonus. Something really interesting that probably affects you more than it affects me because you play a little bit more Spellbreaker than I do. So you know Enchantment Collapse, the really good boon removal trait for World vs. World, where if you remove one boon, it removes another boon from a nearby target? What's really interesting, and it's not actually in the patch notes, but it was on their slides, is they increased the cooldown of Enchantment Collapse from, and I didn't know these existed, 0.97 seconds to 1.04 seconds.
Yeah.
I thought everything rounded, because that's what it does on tooltips. Apparently, it does not.
And what was the actual, like, functional...
So,
like, what was their
why did they do that?
Yeah.
So I suspect, and I don't know Spellbreaker enough to be an authority on this, but I suspect there's something else that has a 1-second boon removal cooldown that they wanted to not trigger every single time, but to still have basically the trait available to trigger whenever you wanted to press a button. I mean, I want to know, like, my biggest reaction to that is not about Spellbreaker, it's just a, build nerd overreaction where I want to be like, okay, tell us the cooldowns on everything. I want numbers, I don't want weird...
like, secret internal cooldowns.
Yeah, secret, weird internal cooldowns that you don't know. Because, yeah, this doesn't affect, like, anyone but me and my cat, but I want to know about that.
No, it's really interesting, I agree.
I think the other...
The adding 0.05 seconds
or whatever
changes it fundamentally. It's cool.
I mean, I like stuff like... I like stuff when they, like... I mean, this is a bad example, but add cats to World vs. World. Not because I like cats, I actually hate them. But because they have to be, like, relevant to how fights attrition, which is a big part of, like, who wins and who loses a macro World vs. World fight. So little changes that affect big things, I really enjoy. that people may not really think about it. But anyway, that's in there. Didn't list it. Thanks, Annette. Is Enchantment Collapse even on here? Okay,
I
they
have
did
it
actually list it. It was,
on the wiki.
No,
yeah.
it is on here. It was just the bottom. They 0.99 to 1.04. So yeah, it matters for something. My other huge warrior change that they did that doesn't really affect warriors so much. I mean, it does, and they should have done this 40 years ago, but they finally fixed Bloody Roar. And for those who don't know, Bloody Roar was the damage bonus, physical damage bonus trait for Berserker Grandmaster that gives... I don't even know what it's at now. I would just want to guess 25% bonus damage while in Zerk mode in PvE, and less in other game modes. The reason this is important is because damage multipliers in this game are really weird. And some of them, both Condi and Power now, are multiplicative based on whatever you have, and then some are additive based on your original value. And Bloody Roar forever was intended to be a multiplicative damage multiplier, and the idea, at least I think that they're going for now, is anything with a percent sign is supposed to be multiplicative, but there's lots of things that aren't. And Bloody Roar, since they put it in the game, has been additive, which has severely nerfed Berserker's overall damage output and their ability to balance it. Hopefully this means that they actually figured out an underlying bug, not only for this, but for everything.
But for all multiplicative skills, yeah.
Well, all things that are additive that are supposed to be multiplicative, because I was reading
For sure.
through their forums the other day because I don't know, I have some kind of something wrong with me. I found out that Sigil of, Impact and Night, where they give 3% damage bonus like base, and then 7% extra based on whether a thing's stunned or whether it's nighttime. The 3% is multiplicative. The 7% is additive.
That is so weird.
Huh?
That is so spaghetti.
Yeah,
I love it.
I don't know. There's no way ANET, a functional company that pays people actual money, hired people that did that intentionally. Or that are that stupid. So I don't think it's ANET's fault.
Yeah.
But that, for everyone listening who's always like, why did they release a patch and like everything's broken now? Like, everything's broken now and you can definitely comment on that, but like, it's not intentional. Like, it can't be, at least everything, right? There's no way someone was like, I'm gonna make this 7% additive when I update this just because. I suspect specifically that one is like that because when they did that big Sigil overhaul like 2 years ago, right? Where they sort of made Sigil of Night not give 10% just damage bonus at night, where it gives like 3% or impact like 3% damage bonus and then like base and then 7% extra, right?
Mm-hmm.
Based on whether or not they're stunned. I suspect when they did that, they just reduced the 3% number from like, 10 to 3, and then they put in a new number in a new like container or whatever, 7, without all the extra codes surrounding it, and that just by default made it additive.
I'm no programmer, but I would love to see under the hull of this game someday.
When this game dies and it goes open source, I've got to know, man.
Well, the really funny thing about it is it's like all of the greatest parts of this game were there day one. So it's like it truly like they're all built on just such a very well designed system, and you can feel the cracks sometimes like that, obviously, right? Because I don't know if that was there in the beginning or if someone added it in, and I don't know.
I think that's just indicative of them like not having any of the original people, because I'm not really like, I do some programming, I know a couple languages, but like I mostly do GUI design. But the thing that you sort of get with any kind of project is like, if I worked on a third of something and then quit, or they hired somebody else, they've got to relearn everything I did. So, and that's in programming, that's not just doing things, it's also learning the ins and outs of like the language you're using. So I don't know.
Absolutely.
That's weird. Hopefully it's game wide. It's probably not. They probably have to do everything individually, and this game will never get fixed. Moving on. Bunch of changes to Outrage, so it works a little bit better with upkeeping Berserk mode for PvE. It doesn't remove stability. Headbutt doesn't remove.
Yeah, there's not that weird dance. Oh, someone accidentally gave me stab, and now it's bad. Yeah, that was messy.
Well, yeah. Headbutt removing stability was very dumb. Lots of reasons. Anyway, moving on. So we're going to go to Thief. We'll go top down. Primary goal for Thief to update: improve the usability of Deadeye in PvE. Yeah. About that. Rifle has a lot of potential as a damage dealing option. Stationary nature of Neil made it difficult potential gameplay situations. We've updated Neil to allow some movement at a reduced speed to give a bit more flexibility during encounters. Fun fact, you move faster moving backwards because they didn't check that.
Oh no! Oh no!
We also added damage reduction to Shadow Shroud and PvE, compensate for the reduction in Shroud health. Good. In the October update, we'll be keeping an eye on how this plays, make further adjustments to status if necessary. I doubt it. Wrapping up the Thief changes are a handful of power damage for Daredevil and Dagger. So, again,
I think these are all like pretty tame changes. I know that there's been some like forum uproar about Deadeye losing range. I honestly think people are way overstating it. I think it's not a big deal at all. But it does seem like a general thing they've been doing for multiple patches now. It's just making weaker builds, bringing them more in line with kind of the Apex builds. And I think that's great, right? Like just making, Dagger do more damage in PvE, main hand Dagger. I think that, there's a real problem in this game with pugging with people, and if someone joins as a DPS and they do incrementally more DPS than they would have before, even if they have a bad build, I think that's just a fine thing for the game. I think it makes the game more friendly,
I kind of agree with that. Well, that's kind of like the theme of this patch, because outside of the, the Firebrand changes and the weird nuance changes that I and like you half care about, they're not really doing a whole lot, but they are bringing some of the underperforming, like Reaper we'll get to.
I will say, you were saying that it's basically like CMC, the Skeleton Crew. I do think they're doing the absolute most they can do
with every patch,
with number change. Yeah, exactly, right? Like very simple changes that have an effect that they don't fundamentally, like they don't require a major rework.
Right.
I think they're doing a very smart job making meaningful changes that require not a lot of work.
So that's something I've actually been asking for a while, because something that really hit home when I, back when I was first starting this game and knew everything, or thought I did, and then I watched an ANET Balance stream, and even now when I, clearly don't know everything and think I do, but I've had a little bit more experience building stuff. Something they pointed out on that stream was you can, like, not everything, most things don't require a rework. You can make anything overpowered just by, if this does 1 damage, okay, it sucks. Well, what if it did 10,000 damage? It would be pretty good.
Yeah.
Sword offhand is arguably the worst weapon in the game, like Warrior Sword offhand. I think it's garbage. I think that is one of the few... Wow, my game disconnected. That's new. That was actually not AFK. Sword, I think, needs a rework, at least a little bit.
You'll like this. Are you ready for this? Because we actually didn't...
Let me finish my thought, and then you can say.
Yeah, go ahead.
So outside of maybe that and like one other weapon, I think everything else can be fixed in the game with number changes. And that's something I actually pointed out in my Warrior video, where it's like, okay, here's some actual suggested number changes. I don't know if they're right because I'm not an ANET balance tester, but you could change everything with just number changes. Okay, say your thing.
Well, I was going to... Well, okay, two thoughts. First thought is that... in PvP right now, there is a very scary Spellbreaker build that uses Sword offhand.
I don't believe you.
I swear to God,
I don't believe
it won the EU monthly this month.
I want you to link it to me, because I do not
I will.
believe you. The only way I have found for Sword offhand, this is completely into the weeds now, the only way I've found for Sword offhand to be viable on Warrior is, the Shieldmaster trait? The one that reflects whenever you block instead, so it makes shield work. Sure. Normally, Warrior Shield doesn't reflect traits. If you take the trait in defense, it did, and before it gave cooldown reduction. Now it doesn't, because Shield is still the most broken thing. If you are channeling a block, even if it's a one-hit block like that, or if you have Aegis on Warrior, that trait is either working as intended or bugged as shit, because it will, as long as you have Aegis, or if you're channeling like Mace block or offhand Sword block, will reflect projectiles and not consume a block, because you're not in melee range.
Sure.
So, because Mace and Sword have very low cooldowns inherently, that's what I was using it for. I don't believe you did someone else, unless it's like some weird rabid Condi Spellbreaker that
it is a Condi Spellbreaker, yes.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I've been trying to make one of those
every single EU team ran one.
Ever. I am really curious now. That's
I will say, I don't think it's that fun, and but it is interesting. I think it is built specifically to counter
Everything else.
specifically Catalyst as a side note.
That's fair. Catalyst is kind of cracked. That's very. Is it dagger sword and then what? Greatsword?
Dagger sword and longbow.
Okay, that's really interesting because longbow's my favorite weapon in the game, and I also think it's the
Oh, there you go.
weapon, so we're gonna have to try this. It frustrates me when other people come up with this crap that I've been trying to make work forever. But all right, that's a separate video. So yeah, updated a lot of stuff on Thief. My question for this, again, I don't play Thief. It's my least played class. You can talk about it a little bit if you want, but it's mostly changes for Spectre and like damage. Does this mean they are looking at reducing other 1500 range skills in the game, specifically Ranger Longbow?
If I had to guess, I would say that they are going to do something with Ranger Longbow soon, especially in PvP right now. It is kind of oppressive. It's kind of not fun. I don't know if that means they reduce the range or if they make some changes to the auto attack. I don't know what the right move is.
Do you think, follow-up question, do you think that people on the forums will not riot enough to get it reverted before that goes through?
All of the Legolas mains will lose their mind, honestly.
I mean, that's been something I've said forever, is that just needs to come down. And the only reason it needs to come down is because it's been in the game for so long. There's just nothing else like it. Like, if you didn't know, the 2 burst skills on Rifle on Warrior are 1500 for no reason as well. Even though
I actually didn't know that.
Even though the weapon is 12. Yeah, welcome to Useless Warrior Facts with Pseudo. Hi, that's what the rest of this podcast is going to be. But, yeah, the F1s are. And even though they've homogenized ranges on everything, they didn't reduce those, and everything else on Rifle is 12. Similarly, I don't think...
weird.
I mean, I say this as a Mesmer main, but I don't think Virtuoso should have dagger 12. I think it should be 9. The fact that you can throw daggers 1200 range is stupid, but it's their baby, whatever. Do you have anything else to say on that topic before I move on to Revenant?
Just on range in general?
Just on Thief in general, but yeah, range.
Yeah, I think I actually...
Because Mortar Kit's 12 or 15 as well, plus AoE.
I think Thief's in an okay spot. Like, I think a lot of people probably won't agree with that, but I think if a Lack Spectre were more popular in PvE, I think that might make people feel better about Thief. But I think as a DPS option, it's always been fine. It's always been relatively easy to play, and I think that is appealing.
I would say Dagger Thief is the OG accessibility build.
Yeah, I agree. And to just continue to make more Thief options viable, I think is a good goal.
I agree. Yeah, a Lack Spectre, I don't know if this was why it was hard to play, but I was just trying it on the Golem, and it's a pain in the butt.
Yeah, it's not fun.
Well, it's because it wasn't intended to be a group buff thing. It was supposed to be solo, and then they were like, wait, we're changing the game, so we need to get AoE of everything.
When they randomly throw a lack on things or quickness,
I mean, again, I think that's a lot to do with, again, End of Dragons out, and also them being locked in different cupboards that didn't talk to each other during COVID. So, I don't know. Spectre was always a weird, like a cool concept, but weird. And I don't get me wrong, I actually really like, and this is why I'm super excited for a 4th expansion, unless they go, hey, we're not doing elite specs, in which case I'm gonna cry and no one's gonna buy it. Don't do that, ain't it?
Oh, here's actually my hot take. My second hot take.
Well, just real quick, I really like it when
ANET.
That's fine. I just really like it when ANET does weird stuff, because when they have a support, they have a damage thing for each class, they have a support arguably thing for each class. Okay, now do something weird. And even if it's Bladespawn where it's buggy and stupid, I like when they do weird stuff. Okay, what's your second hot take?
Okay, my second hot take. I actually think they should not do any more elite specs.
Yeah, I'm not gonna like it.
I think the game is complex enough and has enough room within the existing specs to let people play most anything they want. I mean, there's a few outliers, like a heal warrior, yada yada, but
heal warrior is actually viable.
Yeah, but because okay, I disagree, but
all right, fine.
I get it. Well, viable is viable maybe. Generous. Meta, no, it's not meta. But yeah, I would love to see them reinvent the wheel, I guess is my hot take. Instead of adding a fourth elite spec to do something I don't know, more interesting maybe.
A lot of people have been asking for just core overhauls for a while. I don't know how well that would go because again, balance cadence. I don't know if it affords them to fix that. That's a lot.
Yeah.
I think that would be fine. I wouldn't personally like it because I just like more crap to play with. I think that would be fine if they were allowed to fix the things that exist. And they genuinely put an elite specs worth of work into fixing not just one class, but everything on every class.
Well, and to be clear, I don't think they're going to do this because I think elite
No,
specs sell expansions. Yeah.
Class
So,
wow, there's a Zerg of people. Just side note, actually talking about the game, there's a Zerg of people like killing this one Treb in Air Keep, like that we own, and then I'm killing the one guy that's actually trebbing the keep, like in front of camp. But there's just like this Zerg of people. People are so weird. Oh, it's a Mechanist, so I'm gonna lose this fight too. Great. Anyway, so do you have anything more to add on the we shouldn't do elite specs thing? Oh my god. I'm actually gonna be able to launch him. No, don't stop him. I wanna launch him. Oh, it's not a launch anymore. God damn it, my warrior launch thing isn't a launch anymore, it's a knockdown. Well, he's super knocked down. Fucking knocked down to death. Sorry, swearing because I'm in combat. Anyway, I'll bleep that. Maybe, probably not. But, alright, so I can pull up the Revenant stuff. Do you have anything more to add on Thief?
no. I'm curious to give Deadeye a shot again. It's been a while since I played it. Yeah.
I have one more extremely selfish thing for Deadeye that's not actually relevant to Thief. So, I think this is good, and I didn't talk about this, and I should have when we went through the warrior stuff. I like the warrior changes, not because of what they included, but because of what they didn't include and what they said during the actual, when they were talking about the previous balance patch, where they arguably dumpstered Bladesworn and actually just dumpstered the shout trait that was really overpowered.
Yeah.
I mean, they did also do this thing where they took a lot of stability away from Bladesworn and stun breaks at once, which I don't know if that was a good option, but that's like a balance discussion. It's not really a let's go through the patch notes discussion. Or they moved it rather. The thing with that is, I think, and this is reflective of my opinion of Bladesworn in general, and lots of the videos I've done, and just like the class, and it, especially now that Tactical Reload was updated again and just doesn't work on anything. The class overall needs it needs an overhaul. It needs a rework, and not because it's a bad idea, or like I want it to just I want it to be overpowered. Like people understanding, I should have front loaded this for people who don't listen to everything. I don't want my class to be overpowered. If anything, I want it to be underpowered so I keep playing it. There's a difference between something that's balanced, something that's fun, and something that's good. Like something can do 10,000 damage, but if it feels like crap and isn't is ruining the game for everything else, that's bad. I would rather my class be fun, be cool, be sort of balanced, and be sort of good. Because then I can play with World versus World stuff and be like, haha, I made a full Cavaliers Warrior. But Bladesworn, how it works right now, it doesn't. There's lots of things that are just janky on it that you can see on the surface level. Like when you pull out the sword, you pull it out from your back like a greatsword because they didn't add an unsheathing animation. You can't sheath your your weapon. Whether or not the tech's there for them to be able to put a kit in essentially into a walking stance, I don't know. You can't dye it. Like you spend all this time getting legendary weapons, and now not only can you not use the legendary weapon as your primary, but you only get one weapon as it is. It's essentially got like 2.5 trade-offs where it gives up a weapon the ability to equip 4 sigils, like you can with Discipline on swap sigils, like Revenant can, and like that's the half. And also, what's the other one? It has something else that it gives up. It gives up its base burst skill, so it not only it's like Zerker with more trade-offs and more requirements to use its big hitting skill, which doesn't even hit that hard in PvP unless you take the one trait that everyone trades. Like it has so many fun. Like Lush Forest got changed because they didn't want to take it out of the game or rework it because they don't give warrior development time. But it got reworked to the point where it's just not viable, and you take Unshakable Mountain because Unshakable Mountain is stupid. And their argument for changing Lush Forest without turning this into a just pseudo-complays about Bladesworn for an hour and a half raid is that Lush Forest They didn't want people to just sit at one ammunition and spam Lush Forest over and over. Okay, that's what you do with Unshakable Mountain, because that's the trait still works that way. Lush Forest just works on the first charge instead of the last charge. So it's like your argument, even within what you're posting on your patch notes, just doesn't work. Yeah, it's not consistent. Like, and then aside from that, it also has lots of balance problems, and it's also unbelievably buggy. And every time they try to fix a bug like they did last time, like Daring Dragon is just completely bugged, which is the Grandmaster I take. And actually, every Grandmaster is bugged, but people don't notice it because you only get one slash on all of the other traits. So it's like, this class just needs to be fixed. It needs to be fixed. It needs a rework. It needs something. And the reason, coming back to the actual patch notes, that I'm excited for the Warrior changes in the patch notes is not because of what they said. Like, I'm not a huge Spellbreaker main, so I'm not super upset about them adding like 0.5, 0.05 to a second to affect something that no one cares about. I'm excited because there's no Bladesworn changes in there at all. And when they said they were adjusting, to basically taking the shout trait away from Bladesworn, in the previous patch, they said if this takes it out of PvP, we will aggressively soon put it back in. Whether or not they'll follow through on that, I have no idea, but I think something like a Bladesworn rework, or like a Bladesworn, in quotes, okay, this is the Bladesworn patch, is coming. Like, this was, in quotes, the Firebrand patch. In quotes, the last one could be argued to be the fixed Berserker patch. But it needs it.
Some deep copium.
Well, it just, yeah, I don't know, man.
You're in deep on Warrior here. I respect it.
I mean, if it comes out and, like, I'm gonna be like, I see the code, man. I got my tinfoil hat on. I see behind the code. I know what they're really saying. I don't know. It's just... It's my favorite class, and it's so buggy. And Berserker was my favorite class, and it was so bad. Maybe I'm attracted to failure. Anyway, and the thing also is Bladesworn isn't exactly bad. I mean, it is in PvP now because it doesn't have stability.
It's definitely not bad.
It's still not bad. Like, if you hit with the Dragon Slash, it's going to kill something. It's just, that's the one build, maybe I'm salty, but that's the one build, and also, it doesn't play well. Like, to me, it's not fun. And I don't think you've played very much of it. Just, that's not an insult,
I played a lot of it in PvP, actually.
Okay, fair enough.
When it was kind of broken.
You know how you can go into Dragon Trigger and then nudge the, your character, and you could get a reduced cooldown, but you can still, like, nudge your character, and it'll cancel it?
Yes.
Them
fixing that bug was what I think the biggest nerf to it.
They just changed the bug.
Also.
So without going too into this, I play Daring Dragon in World vs. World because I'm insane and want to be Cloud. And Daring Dragon, how it works is it's the Grandmaster that when you have 10 flow, at the end of using a Dragon Trigger, you can re-enter Dragon Trigger.
Mm-hmm.
So it lets you, like, rocket around and do basically
it's the
damage.
PvE one, yeah.
It's not the PvE one. None of them are the PvE one.
Am I thinking the wrong thing?
It doesn't do anything demonstrably for PvE unless they change something drastically. Because it also reduces the number of bullets that you can load to maximum of 5. So it does much less damage even if you get the full charge. It's just fun because you can, like, omni-slash around, basically, and you can build things that just are perpetually generating flow. What they did to fix that bug was they changed, and this is why I really want to see under the code, and now we're way off into the weeds, into the ditch, into more weeds, but, like, I made a whole video about this. What they did to fix that bug is they changed when it reads in the whole process of... There's an event chain, basically. When you go into Dragon Trigger, it's go into Dragon Trigger, consume flow, load bullets, read how many bullets are loaded, do Dragon Trigger, check if Daring Dragon is equipped, like, swap out weapons, check if Daring Dragon is equipped, check if you have 10 flow, re-enter Dragon Trigger. And that actually will swap through your weapons and go out and in because of how the class is built, not designed, but built. Because before, if you remember in the first beta for this, you had to have Gunsaber out as well in order to enter Dragon Trigger, which was awful.
Yeah, that was gross.
But
yeah.
A residual of that, and this is the kind of thing, like, where I get really into, like, theory crafting and build crafting, and I might lose some people, is a residual of that and them carrying over and not really reworking how the class is built is now, in order to enter Dragon Trigger, and this is actually accidentally the one reason why that class is still relevant in PvP, and I'll explain that too, is that you have to swap into, in quotes, swap into Gunsaber in order to enter Dragon Trigger. And you can see that because every time you exit Dragon Trigger, you're automatically in Gunsaber. It's just whether or not your weapon swap is on cooldown after that. And a lot of people, I feel like, don't actually notice that. Because if you have, like, a great sword equipped and pull out Dragon Trigger, you will end it in Gun Saber.
Yeah.
Which is clunky and weird and kind of bad, and I'd rather them just increase the cooldown on Dragon Trigger than them do that. And the reason, and also have it not swap through Gun Saber, and the reason I hate this is, and getting away from your actual question, I'm sorry, I swear to God I'll get back to it, or you'll just fall asleep and leave. I hate it because it triggers on swap sigils going into Dragon Trigger. Because it swaps.
And you want to
through Gun
control
Saber.
that more?
I want to control that more because I only get 2 on swap sigils now, even if I'm running Discipline. So they're important. And the reason that's actually a good thing, and this is an accidental good thing, and this is why I know ANET either tested this or just doesn't care, is because, you know, Sigil of, it's called Intelligence in PvP, it's called Vision in World vs. World. It makes your next 3 attacks crit, or in World vs. World makes the next attacks for the next 3 seconds crit. Which is obviously better, but that's... In PvP, it's actually better because it gives you this sort of buff on your bar that you'll see that has 3 charges.
Yeah.
And you will retain that for 10 seconds. And that's actually better for Bladesworn, because even if those 3 seconds expire, or you're loading bullets into your Gun Saber, you will almost always trigger that whenever you pull out Dragon Trigger, so you will almost always crit, because you have to swap through Gun Saber. So you always get crits and don't have to build like Assassin's Amulet or more crit chance or anything else from Warrior, which again adds to my argument of, okay, this is only good because of accidents. And that's how Warrior works. It's only good because 3 things on it are accidentally good, and they can't change any of that because it changes how the class is fundamentally built and played, and god damn it, I'd just rather have a class that works, so I can build stuff. It's just, it's so weird. But getting back to your question,
I think it's true
sorry.
of most classes, though, to be fair. I think the game, there's so many, like, oddities in this game.
It's 10 years old. There's gonna be. It's just, I'd rather be able to just not swap through Gun Saber, thanks. I don't know. Why is that hard? Just make it a separate kit.
I feel you on expecting a rework someday to Bladesworn.
Well,
we'll see. Because especially if they're trying to remove some of the what is the word they used? Downsides, right? Like Soul Beast gets a swap again. Trade-offs, yes.
I don't know if they'll ever do that. If they do that, what they're gonna do is they're gonna make Gun Saber like True Transform, basically, which is another question. It has properties of both a True Transform, a weapon swap, and a kit. But that's a separate issue. I think they would give it back as a 3rd weapon, which is what I was asking for Warrior forever. It was actually just the ability to equip a 3rd weapon. I thought that'd be rad as an elite spec, and then have your weapon swap be longer.
That would be crazy.
I think they will do that, and then they'll just make your weapon swap longer, like 15 or something, and then obviously have that reduced by discipline traits and stuff. I think that would be great. And then just make your Dragon Trigger a separate kit. But to actually answer your question, I swear to God I'll make this brief. What they did was... They fixed that bug by changing in that sequence of checking the Daring Dragon and flow consumption and everything, where it reads that you're in Dragon Trigger. And I know this is an ironclad fact because Daring Dragon is completely borked right now, as to say, if you generate 10, like 100 flow, and spam out Dragon Triggers, right? Like alternating so you actually get the reduced cooldown. How many, logically, if you have 10 flow and it takes 10 to re-enter Dragon Trigger, do you think you could get?
No idea.
Well, it's 10 to 11, right? Because you're still building flow because you're still in combat, and it's consuming flow as you're, it consumes 10 flow per charge, in quotes.
Okay.
So you should logically be able, and you could get 10 to 11 Dragon Triggers off of 100 flow charge, without any additional flow consumption. Obviously, you build more flow consumption, you can just stay in there forever.
I got you, yeah.
Now, you can only get 7 to 8 base. And somewhere in this chain, and it happens if you equip any of the... I've tested this, and it's really annoying to test, but if you equip any of the Grandmasters, you just don't see it, because all the other ones only have 1 slash. It actually gives you reduced flow consumption, and I don't know if that's because they changed it to just... when you're swapping out and swapping back in, read don't build flow, or when you're not, X condition is met, it's like don't build extra flow, or something just doesn't cause you to build flow now, but it's something. And it's really annoying that affects like 0.04% of players but that's not going to get fixed, and that's a grandmaster that no one uses but me, and now it's fucked because they did something that was supposed to fix another bug. And also, by the way, if you organically run out of flow by doing dragon triggers with Daring Dragon, Dragon Trigger just goes off cooldown anyway, and you can press it again.
Yeah.
It just has no cooldown. So they introduced another bug, didn't fix it, and made it worse. And aren't going to change it. Well, hopefully they are. I don't know. It's just... It's so frustrating because it was like, oh, this is the one thing I'm playing in World vs. World. Hey, we didn't fix this and we changed it. Cool. Anyway. Thief. Last comment on that. You know how they changed Neil to like be able to let you move around and probably speed up?
Move and
it's
walk,
my
yeah.
fault. I have been asking for Dragon Trigger to root you like Thief forever.
Dragon Trigger.
It should just be Neil. Why isn't it Neil?
I mean,
Why
you
can
mean,
I-
you mean let it move? Let you move while you have it?
I mean, that's what I think they'll get to eventually, and I think that's what they're testing is sort of the EI Jutsu, keep my short sword shield and put me into RP walking thing. I
Yeah.
think that's what it will end up as. But why isn't it basically, in quotes, a stance, like Neil, that you toggle on and off with a button instead of nudging your character accidentally?
Oh, interesting.
That would have fixed that bug. Then they wouldn't have had to do that bug fix. Then they could have just had it like... Then you could actually rotate your character and aim at that invisible thief that's behind you without targeting them because you currently can't aim your character.
Then it removes kind of the what's it called? The resource management aspect of the class.
Why? No. You don't have it available all the time. It's just
Oh,
when
I
you
understand what
press
you're
it,
saying, yeah.
or when you can press it, it roots you. Like it's just in order to unroot you, you need to press F2 again, like on Deadeye, like, or do the slash. Like, why doesn't it do that? Like, what? The code was
That is
in the game.
The deep spaghetti.
Well, like the code is in the game. Like, why didn't you do that? Like, then you could aim your dragon triggers, which is the biggest problem I have functionally with the class, is when something goes into stealth and I'm facing one way that's usually off a cliff, I can't attack them without killing myself or
you
running
just
off the
send it.
cliff, or if I know where they are. And by the way, the base slash, the like force one or whatever it's called, the number one, isn't a true AoE and won't hit behind you. So even if you use it and someone runs behind you in stealth, you can't hit them. Which is, again, eliminating any counterplay to stealth whatsoever, barring even adding reveal. So it's like, what the heck? I don't know. I could rant about Bladeswarm forever, but let's move on to Revenant.
Word.
Alright. Vindicators continue to be a powerful force in PvP. Not going to read the rest because the most notable condition to this, and you brought up a good point about Mirage, is that they are removing the ability to dodge while immobilized with Vindicator, which is really good, in my opinion.
Yeah. I still think it keeps Vindicator as a pretty top spec, but it brings it more in line, more reasonable.
I like...
Yeah, go ahead.
No, just real quick. I like Vindicator on a design. I'm talking way too much. I should let you talk for hours. But
No,
like,
you're fine. You're
on
fine.
a design base, I like the idea of Vindicator, especially since it has 2 dodges now and they're less punishing to get hit by, because they're freaking dodges. I think Vindicator is broken for things that aren't the dodge, but continue.
Well, I mean, just to respond to that, I personally find classes that affect your dodge, I struggle to jive with them.
So even
But
Daredevil?
I accept Daredevil's the exception. Obviously.
Daredevil's just better thief, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But yeah, no, like I've never really been able to enjoy Mirage. I mostly main Herald in PvP, and I struggle to enjoy Vindicator in the same way. But that's just an aside. I feel like messing with dodges messes with the flow of the game in some way. But I get why players like it.
I mean, that's a fair point. I hate all Mesmer builds except for Mirage, which I love, which I played the most of PvP.
And then you're one of the players it's built for.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, this is my class.
Yeah.
I actually have a lot of people joining, and they're like, "Oh, how do I find my class?" I'm just like, just play stuff.
Yeah.
It's gonna be something you didn't know. Like, I never thought I'd be a warrior theory crafter, and that's all I spend my time doing.
But no, I mean, otherwise these rev changes like are crazy, right? They're basically just like PvE. Quick Herald is just buffed across the board in almost every imaginable way. I don't know the actual DPS values they added to it, but I've played it a few times already. I did the new CM with it, and it just pumps, and it's just good. I don't really think there's much more to say there. It's already like a decent build, and it just does more damage now.
Oh, that's really interesting. One of the other things is why you would do this other than maybe being able to pull bosses from outside intended range. Spear of Archimedes reduced the range from 2,000 to 1,200, but only in PvE.
They didn't change it in PvP. Oh, that's so weird.
Yeah, they didn't change it in PvP. More importantly, they didn't change it in World versus World. So
Maybe you're right that was this range thing is a larger overtaking that they're looking at.
In PvE, I don't know.
Yeah, that is weird. That's weird.
I mean, it's got to be an encounter-based thing, right? Like you can pull this boss and do like kill it from outside its range or something. Although they did make the power coefficient 0, they only
just spam the skill out of range. The boss never attacks you.
Yeah,
I could see that being a bug. Yeah.
Pierce Rage, nothing noticeable there.
The most boring way to do a boss fight.
No, the most boring way to do the boss fight was, like I said, just spamming burns on Doom while just thrown and not you didn't know.
Brutal.
That was stupid.
Oh, I will say PvP. Oh my god, I wish they would stop trying to make Condi Herald the thing. It's so unfun to play and unfun to play against. I don't know why they're pushing it so hard.
It's really interesting because that was like my first Condi class.
I think it's like fine. It's just in terms of Condi classes, there's so many other I'd rather see be in the game. But they want to push this. So.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, I'm in the camp of I'd rather really like any of the warrior specs to not be melee damage, but
yeah.
I think that's just kind of me being salty. But I get it. I think they're valid points, if not a little biased. Yeah, just a lot of PvP numbers changes, a lot of like energy adjustments, so that things become less aggressive.
Yeah. And I think they will be, but I mean, not to get too into the weeds on the PvP meta.
Oh, go for it. I just talked forever about Bladesworn. You have at least one.
Yeah. I think the PvP meta right now is dangerously getting to a place where it's going to slow down so much as to not be fun. I'm a little worried about it. I think that we've had a really like explosive meta the past few patches, and it's been a lot of fun. And I do think they want to tone it down a bit because, like, when teams play 2 roamers, it can be kind of unfun, especially if you're less experienced. But you're seeing teams now run 3 side noders, 1 support.
Ew.
Yeah, and that's not. It's just less fun. Like, especially this Condi Spellbreaker build. It's very slow. It's very bunkery, and it just kind of sits there on point until it pushes you off the point.
Oh, that's my kind of build. You gotta link me this. No, I understand that no one wants to play against that crap, and that I ruin the game.
Yeah,
almost
I think
with my intent, so
I think it just does kind of ruin the game slowly. Or not ruin the game. It's just less fun, you know.
No,
here you go.
fair.
I've linked it for you here.
Because I'm the kind of person who really liked playing decap scrapper, and I wanted more decap things in the game, and I understand at a high level, that fundamentally just ruins stuff. So because people like it's just because of how the
game's more fun when things die, you know.
Yeah. Banner of Defense.
Yep. Oh, Banner of Defense is so strong in PvP right now.
Dude, I love it. I was wondering if any of them were going to be like low-key stupid after they introduced it.
Yeah, it's kind of a stupid build.
Oh, this is cute. Resilient Roll is actually, just comment on that. It's actually bugged. It only gives 2 seconds of resistance instead of 3. More warrior crap they didn't test, but yeah, I can see this being stupid. Runes of Balthazar. That's
your main source of damage is burning from longbow.
Yeah, I see it.
So I think it's pretty reasonable, especially like in rank, to take the Traveler or whatever they list as the other option, because you're so slow. It's probably the slowest build I've played in years.
I mean, yeah, you have a couple leaps, but they're very conditional.
Yeah, and they're also really short leaps.
Yes, they are. Very cute. I'll try some kind of stupid variant. It's good that someone finally came up with this Condi Spellbreaker build, even if it wasn't me. Like that's, I don't know.
Yeah.
Even if you hate it, I like to see variety in the game. But offhand sword getting some time to shine, very interesting.
Oh, and someone else was saying this. That just that offhand sword has been gradually buffed over and over and over again, and it's still bad.
Yes.
But yeah, just the fact that it just keeps getting buffs. Like one day, it's like right now, it's rearing its ugly head. It's just too strong now.
It also runs a rabbit amulet, so you have all the toughness and all the vitality in the game. So yeah.
Yep.
And you get permanent. Oh, you actually run revenge counter. That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Offhand sword is the only weapon I would say, besides maybe projectile speed on longbow. I don't think the skills are necessarily really terrible. I just think the projectile speed is ass. This game also does, again, more under the hood with pseudo. This game also does something for long-ranged attacks where it will actually not, regardless if you have quickness or alacrity or whatever, for certain things like longbow and shortbow and longbow and ranger, longbow and warrior, it's not for everything, but there's like this weird nebulous region where sometimes it will just not spawn additional projectiles until the original projectiles have hit. For things that don't have a cooldown, like longbow 4, which has a very low cooldown, or the auto attack on longbow, it will not attack again, let alone the projectile being the worst one in the game, period, because it's so slow. It will not spawn additional projectiles until both of the original ones have hit. And
Interesting.
if nothing
That
else,
is
they need
deep
to fix
under
that.
the hood. I like that.
It's very weird. And you can give yourself all the quickness in the world, but you're not going to really be shooting faster unless you're in melee range. It's very strange. It's another one of those things that only affects... you only really use longbow and PvE on Kandi Zerker, so no one talks about it. It doesn't get a lot of exposure.
Yeah. That's a relevant bug, though, for sure.
Yeah, it's just weird. I would rather see them just, how do you fix that is you don't even touch it, you just up the projectile speed on longbow because it's trash. Anyway, regardless of the power of this, like, one spellbreaker thing. Yeah, I don't know. Spellbreaker was already strong. It runs discipline because this makes sense. Like this in the
Well, and Spellbreaker has so much variety right now in PvP. Like, I'm actually a little disappointed they did not nerf Spellbreaker slightly.
Well, they only just buffed it.
I know. Well, yeah, true. It's only had one patch to shine, but it's about to be more and more oppressive, basically.
I don't know. I'm okay with that if they bring some of the other stuff up, but I don't play PvP. I should have said this at the beginning. He's much more of a PvP, PvE person than I am. I mean, PvE, we're about the same, I think. He's definitely more PvP knowledge-based, and I live in the build editor for World vs. World and have no life, so that's that.
And you're over here crunching warrior numbers.
Dude, when you play as much warrior theorycrat and you're like, why doesn't this work? Oh, that's stupid. You just... Encyclopedia of useless knowledge.
Should we move to Ranger?
Yeah, so we're on Ranger. Untamed really just... They talked a little bit about this. They actually didn't change the cooldown thing. They buffed a bunch of, like... just, like, numbers for PvP World versus World. Some skills now only... or also upload their bonuses to Defiant enemies for the sake of PvE. It had a lot of those, like Untamed does.
Yeah, I know I like that design-wise, right? Because, I mean, it's true for Warrior Hammer as well, where it's like, oh, these weapons are borderline unusable in PvE, and just by making the simple change, like, you breathe life into those builds again. I think that's a good decision. It's a little weird. It does kill some of the design of the weapon, but I'm not mad at it.
Yeah, it's just how the game's built. Like,
yeah.
People working on encounters. Predator's Onslaught, similarly in that vein, the just damage trait for Untamed also will apply it against Defiant foes. I'd say the only really thing of note to me is Chomp was reduced on Drake, which is funny because Drake was just stupid and they knew it.
It's been nerfed multiple times now. Like, thank God.
Tail Whip was...
Oh, You're right.
Yeah, and then
well,
Chomp is now being brought down.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen Untamed
it was
right now. It's terrifying. I think it's still terrifying. It's still probably the best.
Its burst is really good. If you can out dodge its burst,
it's so insane.
It does nothing. I mean, it doesn't.
Well, but the problem is that Ranger should have never been given a teleport. Right? Ranger being able to maul you out of nowhere is pretty toxic.
I'm fine with that. I just think Warrior should have a real teleport. I'm so salty that they were like, we're giving everything teleports, and Warrior got like this 300 range 2 charge 60-second cooldown thing that's ultra conditional and has no animation, and is like, bruh, that's not a teleport. I can't even teleport up to some Skyhammer platforms down below them with that. Like, that is not a real teleport. Just okay, so here's my solution for this. Don't give it a teleport, and more than anything else in the game, my one stupid fun change, not functional, but fun change I want them to do in this game is make Stomp work like the original Vindicator dodge they did from the first beta, where it will ignore terrain, and you can go up or down with it, and you have to target it. So it's a targeted movement skill that jumps you into the air, puts you down wherever you are, as long as it's terrain bound, So you can't just, again, pathing, you can't just, old Scourge teleport into pyramids with it. But that's it. It's not a true teleport, but it's a true movement skill. And that's the Armistice I'm willing to work with them on that for.
I like that as fun. That'd be fun. I mean, I do think that there's just been like massive teleport power creep in the game. I actually would like to see them address that, and I don't think they will. But I just think giving every class like insane teleports has been.
There was a lot of ones.
It's been negative, I think, overall. But it's been. I mean, it's been fun. But I think Ranger in particular is particularly egregious with.
Is it 12? Is Untamed 12? Or is it 9?
I don't know offhand. Yeah.
Look it up.
I think it's 9, but I'm not
Place your bets. I mean, that's something this is another thing that comes up a lot. We're bringing up a lot of under the hood stuff on this first.
It's
podcast.
900,
it's
yeah,
really good. So we'll never ever have to bring them up again. But yeah. So something that we saw that they can do in this patch, similar to the previous patch, they did this thing where they added charges to just Torch on Berserker in PvP in World versus World, which I didn't know they could do. It's only on charges in the competitive game modes. It's not in PvE. But
I love them doing that. They did this previously with Tempest.
Here's the thing. It has to be a blast finisher in all game modes, and they said that on stream. So, what the heck? What's game mode specific? What's locked based on their engine? I need to know this.
Oh, yeah, what technically is...
Right.
Yeah.
Because they said they had to make that a blast in all the game modes, but they could add charges, which they've never ever done, at least in my memory, to something
Well, a lot of people were theorizing also that range is locked.
It's not, though, because they only changed it in PvE.
Oh, that's true.
Patch.
For Arkham
That's what I'm
Horror,
saying.
You're totally right. Oh, that's
and for
super
Deadeye,
weird.
I think. Oh, no, Deadeye's everywhere.
Yeah, Deadeye's everywhere, yeah.
But Arkham Horus, that's why I was on the Revenant change. I was like, oh, this is interesting, not because of Revenant,
that is
but because
interesting.
It's only in PvE. So, what's locked to the game mode?
That is I know even less than I thought I knew.
Well, again,
yeah.
okay, so the range on the teleport's 900, so just make it, what about a 600 range teleport in PvP? Would that be fair? Because I hate the Warrior one, but mostly because it's 300, and because I'm salty because it doesn't have an animation at all. And spend some development money on Warrior. Dude, it's so bad. They reused half of the animations that existed in
Dude, you remember the
I don't want to, whatever you're gonna say.
No. I love it. I think it's brilliant. The new the invisible chair they just put out, the illusion of sitting. That has got to be the smartest way to reuse assets for free.
I'm fine with that because that's content,
I love it.
right?
I respect it.
It's like all the recolors of weapon sets that they're gonna do. I would rather them do that than put less weapons in the game.
Yeah.
Because that is easy, that is something people can work toward, and it's kind of fun, and it gives you more variety because you can't dye weapons in this game. So, yeah, fine. Put weird vermilion and arsenite?
Yeah. Arsenic? I don't know.
Different color. That's cool. That's fine. So, notable other than this, the other reason I think this is actually cool because it's kind of like a patch notes thing and then a little bit under the hood, speculation and stuff. So, they did mention on the stream they were previewing this balance patch that they were doing all these buffs, and then they were probably going to nerf the thing that just... It's like a cooldown trait that whenever they apply a CC, it reduces all the cooldowns on their kit by, something stupid, 4 seconds. It's a Grandmaster.
Yes.
They're
what is
going
it called?
to be nerfing that. So they're bringing up some of this other CC stuff, and then they're bringing up...
Fervent Force.
Yeah, they're bringing up the actual damage trait, so you can take that, and then they can probably add, a longer cooldown to the cooldown thing.
Which is good. I don't play Untamed in PvE.
Yeah, clearly
I've never found it fun.
Not how it was designed, probably.
But yeah, Untamed in PvE has become Fervent Force, the class, right? Which I think is obviously bad design.
Well, yeah, it's just... That's just how they have to do it. They have to make everything overpowered, and then they bring stuff down, rather than releasing all their classes, having them be garbage, or having them be Bladesworn, and then fixing them. I'm not salty. So, other than this... probably portends the aim for Fervent Force, or at least bring it down in PvE. Ranger, other notable this, a little bit Druid healing brought up. Who cares? It still doesn't give stability in World versus World. But good to see. Up to Necromancer, and boy, is this almost the Necromancer patch.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of juicy things here.
Well, let's start with Sorry, go ahead.
No, you start. You pick one.
No, I'm just gonna go with the first one and also the one that's the most introducing.
That's what I was gonna say.
the
Corrupt Boon, man.
No, that's not the. Oh,
Oh.
I can't read. No, I wasn't on the right part of the page. Well, my first thing, screw it. So other than the damage changes that they did for a lot of this stuff, it is the first thing. I just can't. It's ultra can't read. They talked a little bit about how feed from corruption is actually really unhealthy, and they want to rework it in the future. So they're dramatically dumpstering it right now, which is kind of. If I was a Scourge player, I would be kind of frustrated at this. I think because they took away the Shade trait, which was blatantly aimed at World versus World. Like the larger, like they still run it. The larger shades mean more targets. It was blatantly meant for that, so that you could have 20 target Scourges, and then they, that was unhealthy because everyone was running all the just numbers traits, so they reduced all those, and then everyone was running Golemancer runes to just increase targets and abuse the game, which actually, again, I think is really clever, but they reduced those. So to counter all of this, the last viable Scourge Grandmaster is kind of going away. It's not ultra going away because it's still really good, right? Like, especially with all the corruption they're adding with like Corrupt Boon and stuff. This is still the trait you take for competitive, at least. It's still good. I would just be mechanically frustrated at this, be like, okay, this is my last viable thing. Can you buff some of the other stuff a little bit? I don't know. I'm not a Necromancer player.
I think that ArenaNet has correctly identified that the core design of Scourge is problematic and competitive.
Firebrand,
no, seriously.
Too.
And I think they're like, I think they want to push people away from playing Scourge. I mean, in PvP currently, Scourge is literally unplayable. Like it is maybe the worst spec in the entire game in SPVP. And intentionally so. They're like, we just don't want people playing this. It's a band-aid until they can figure out how to actually do it well. I can't speak for World v World. I know I get the concept that like, oh, if you can steal all the boons, like that's pretty insane.
I don't know if it's that insane. It's just more boon coverage, I would say, in Zerging.
Yeah.
The fact that it already has a lot of the AoE.
It's just such a dominant class, like pretty much always. I have no. I mean, I'm not a Necro main. I'm sure Necro mains have other thoughts, but
Yeah, type up in the comments how we're wrong if you are.
I just like I think nerfing some of the super powerful things like Scourge just opens up some variety, and I think that they have decided that they'll make more drastic changes generally. Like you see this honestly with Herald. Like Herald was overbuffed this patch, and I think they just want people to build Quick Herald on their account so that they're not always defaulting to Quick Brand. And I think that they probably are trying to do something similar with Scourge generally.
Yeah, I don't know.
That, on the flip side, though, Corrupt Boon is about to be scary in PvP.
Good.
I think it might single-handedly make Tempest no longer the meta support, but we'll see.
It's funny how adjusting other classes pushes other, the class that they didn't adjust out.
Yeah, true.
I mean that's balance, right? That's the something's good until it's not.
Yeah.
I would be fine with that if Scourge is still fun to play somewhere, because the thing again, the trade-offs thing, it's like, oh, you don't pulse your shades around you.
Mm-hmm.
Like everyone who I played was playing Scourge at the time for all of our raids hated that. And they didn't hate it because of the numbers. They hated it because it wasn't fun to play, because you couldn't in a raid, you had shades down, so you couldn't do things like Cleanse Doom's Fear or anything like that. And
I think Scourge is so fun in PvE. I'm surprised to hear
it. Yeah. I'm just saying, I don't want to see it end up at that level where it's just like, oh, you took, because I've been there, right? I played Berserker for years. It was my favorite class until Blades 1 came out. It was bad.
Yeah.
It still is kind of bad. But I don't want it to end up where it's just you take everything away from it so that the numbers are so low it mechanically doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what they did with Scourge and PvP.
Yeah. And it's kind of what they had to do with Firebrand before this Scourge rework.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But arguably, Firebrand was AoE support the class, and Scourge was AoE damage the class. So
yeah.
Now there may be fixing
it. But other than that, Reaper changes, interesting. I think that's again part of that whole thing where it's like, oh, someone's playing not the meta option, it's still more viable. Just objectively good.
I want a trait for Reaper be a hot take, and I don't play enough Reaper, and I should because it's cool. I want a trait for Reaper that... I'm going to see how I can phrase this. Doesn't exactly give them a projectile attack, but makes their attack more ranged than it is. And maybe not even one of their Grandmasters, because they need the Grandmasters to do damage. Because from a guild leader, and maybe only in PvE, maybe they can do that now, make something... I mean, clearly melee attacks have their own range, right? It's just very low. Everything's ranged in this game. It's just, you know, almost...
Yeah,
I want to say
ranged is it?
almost, right?
Yeah.
Like, how is what's melee? Because some attacks have like 160 range, even though melee is technically 130, and it's like, that's weird, but that's just a carryover from them never adjusting that skill. Like, I think the sword rip is 160 for no reason. But, so like, if they can split it a little bit, I don't think the problem, and I don't play Reaper, I'm probably wrong. I'm probably wrong about everything, let's just get that out of the way forever. But I don't think the problem with Reaper, or at least not the main problem, if they fix the damage, which it looks like they are in the cooldowns a little bit, so it plays better, is the damage. I think it's a very cool class, fantasy-wise class, and I think it can do damage, especially now. I don't think, again, people will take this because it's not ranged damage. And especially with the new fights where placement and you have to spread out and everything is king, this can't do perpetual damage, whether Condi or power, if you're off the boss.
It is a much longer conversation. I so badly want them to implement a range tax, right? Like if a melee DPS does 48,000 in PvE, like if a melee DPS does 40,000,
right,
a range should do 36,000, something like that.
Something heavier,
because it's inherently better, right?
Right.
I don't know why they don't want to do that.
Right. It's very weird that Mechanist's like damage weapon is rifle, and then like also their damage weapon is a ranged mech.
Yeah.
So like, what? I would definitely be down with that. That's something they actually have talked about before, where it's like, okay, at least from a design perspective, and this is actually their whole argument for why longbow is bad and longbow is technically a melee weapon. Kel Cohen has been on record saying that. On Warrior anyway.
For Warrior, yeah.
Yeah. Where it's... You can't have something that's better than range, like you said, like a ranged weapon be better than a melee weapon, because then there's no trade-off. That's kind of why they changed the Revenant shortbow the first time they changed it, so that all your shots didn't just go in a line, they all hit the one thing if you were far enough away. That was the idea behind that change, and then they changed it again down the road and just made everything auto-target and made it stupid. But that was the idea, where you had to be at enough range for this to be good, but also that's a stupid way of doing that, because that's just internally considering shortbow. That's not, and they realized that, that's not shortbow versus like mace sword, right? Because then like, what's the penalty for using mace sword skills, I guess, far away? They're just, you know, you just don't hit.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. That is a way longer conversation. We can move on. But yeah, good changes for Necro. I'm a little bit concerned. I don't think this will be egregious, but it'll be egregious if some really good Necro player, so like the one that's left... Oh god, that was really hot, that emergency waypoint. We are losing this keep, and I am so dead.
Oh no.
No, it's fine. It's just Ospreys. No one cares about that. So Signet of the Locust, the movement speed Signet, right? Increased healing per target struck, actually a lot, based from 500 to 800. This hits, I think... I don't know how many things. It might be 2, it might be 5. Hang on. The reason I'm checking this is Signet of the Locust is actually... It hits 5 things, and it removes 2 boons. And it also base heals
that's pretty nutty.
1,500 per target. Yeah, so Signet of the Locust, especially with the Signet cooldown trait, if you can work it in, is actually really overpowered. It's basically a better second heal skill. And no one knows that, because, again, this is an issue of exposure. No one takes it because no one takes it. I think it's also unblockable, or like is unblockable and doesn't say that, and does damage and gives extra healing per boon removed that scales. Yeah, and has a radius of 600. This is a very good skill.
I mean, the core issue is that Necro utilities are
very
so
Yes.
competitive. Yeah. Which I think is okay, right? I mean, you know, maybe we'll see this feel oppressive, but, you know, like in PvP, you have one available utility. Like that's it. And now it's gonna be corrupt boon most likely. So it's weird that because necro utilities are so good, a skill this good
agree.
won't see play. You know,
It's kind of the reverse warrior problem where Shake It Off was just the button that did everything.
Yeah.
What, it had 2 charges, originally had a 30-second cooldown, cured 5 conditions, and stun breaked everybody in a 600 radius and healed them. Like, how can anything compete with that? How can anything else, let alone in the utility slot, how can any other trait on warrior or anything else ever be buffed until that was fixed? Like, that was my argument, my second argument in my warrior video, other than discipline is really overpowered. And I
mean, it's true. It's true for a lot of classes, right? Like
dragons. So, are you saying the warrior thing's true, or are you saying the necro thing's true, or they balance around the class?
Both are true. Where it's like,
Okay,
like if you have a utility that does everything, then it inherently removes a utility slot from your class, right?
Well, it also removes a lot of the kind of what they've been talking about on warrior, the space where you can fix other things, right? Because if Shake It Off was as broken as it was, and then also they gave Fear Me like 6 charges, like you just take those 2 skills, and that when I made the warrior thing, and it's better illustrated in the paper, I tried to assign like rankings to how good things are, and the only thing that made it to S tier, at least in this is just looking at warrior top down, and this is before Bladesworn was in the game. The only thing that made it to S tier was Shake It Off, and the only thing that made it to absolutely you have to take this on everything forever period tier, which is like triple S tier, was Fast Hands. And before Bladesworn was in the game, because again, my whole argument for how to fix warrior, which was just either do a whole bunch of overhaul, fix a bunch of the weapons, adjust all the numbers, and take forever, or just make Fast Hands baseline and adjust everything, because it already is.
Yeah, I wouldn't be mad at Fast Hands being baseline for class. It feels good fantasy too.
Well, it's also just like how you play the class.
Yeah.
Like it's a fast-paced, greatsword wielding, sort of dodgy, evadey thing, and you can't, or just make it Fast Hands like 3 seconds baseline off your cooldown, and then it does the extra 2 or whatever, so that the rune that you can take occasionally actually matters. It's just. It's so oppressive to everything else on the Warriors kit, and obviously Bladesworn came out, and then I'm going to guess they still run tactics just because, in PvP. Am I wrong?
Well, honestly, Bladesworn's not even seeing PvP. I'm not sure what Bladesworn specifically runs.
I was going to ask you because you said you were still playing it in PvP, but maybe you only meant.
Oh no, until the most recent patch. But most are running Discipline, Defense, and then whatever the third elite spec is. I assume the Bladesworn are doing the same thing, but I'm not actually positive.
Well, I wouldn't doubt that, because it's always the last thing they touch, right? And they last touched Discipline, and also they moved all the stability into Discipline, which is a separate issue, but.
Yeah, I don't know, because, well, it's I don't know, it's weird, because you needed tactics to get shout heals.
Yep.
So.
Do you have any idea what any of the other traits did in tactics?
No, I mean.
No, why would you?
No.
Why would you learn those?
Yeah. I guess there's martial cadence, but yeah.
Here, fun fact, you know that middle trait that auto triggers, like trait Shake It Off? There's a 20-second internal cooldown?
Yeah.
The best part of that trait is not the auto triggering Shake It Off. That trait actually makes you heal and heal allies whenever you remove a damaging condition from them. And that does not only apply to shouts or the Shake It Off, that applies to every time you remove a condition.
There's your heal warrior.
I mean, that's kind of how it works, but no one knows that because it's worded like crap. That's like one of the best traits in the game. Yeah, it's nuts. I don't know. I'm a big fan of them honestly creating space on stuff, and if they have to do something like that for Reaper or whatever it is, more power to them. Also, Death Perception has an extra tab before its bullet point, and that's driving me nuts. Someone got paid to write that. Anyway, Mirage, not much to say about it, other than apparently they also removed... Oh. Second, reduced might stacks from 8 to 2. They said they reduced it from 8 to 2 on Chaos Vortex, the staff ambush. Apparently it only gives 1 in World vs. World, and someone's salty about that. I don't know how that happens. Moving on doesn't matter. You had some interesting comments. They're reducing continuous split a little bit, which is good.
Just Chrono and PvP in general?
Yeah, you had some interesting comments on that, where it's kind of becoming a thing. And not the reason people were thinking. Like, it'll add
they're basically two Chronomancer builds in PvP historically. One is a bunker, and the other is kind of roamer DPS. And I think, especially with the addition of Alacrity, the ability that a Chrono bunker has now is just unfun, right? And if we truly see, well, because in PvP, a permanent Alacrity in PvP is just insane.
For
right?
you,
Like,
or for your team, or for both?
For both, right? Like no one, the game was not designed with permanent Alacrity in mind for PvP. And I think, weirdly enough, the build is balanced, but if we move into more of a bunker meta, which I do think we're moving towards, I do think this build becomes pretty problematic, because you can stick, one pseudo bunker team fight duelist kind of person on the thing, just a tankier 2v2er, and then pair them with a Chrono, and you do every skill twice as often,
right?
Which is insane. I would love to see them push more towards the roamer Chrono. I think that's more fun.
Roamer's the next elite spec, actually.
Yeah, Chromer, yeah. I think that's more fun, but yeah, that's my only real take on it. I think it's one of those things that they're just going to continue to see how it is performing, really? And make tweaks.
At least to me, it's really weird that, again, I say this as a salty warrior player, but like, they gave whatever it's called, distortion back to Chrono and Virtuoso, right?
Yeah.
That means effectively they have that. Chrono has like continuum split, and then it has the double shield block and like other crap, right?
Oh yeah.
Lots of evades, lots of all kinds of things to mitigate damage while you can go full blast. Virtuoso doesn't get Alacrity, but it gets, what's it called? All of its dagger skills pierce by default. You don't have to take a trade for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Silly. They're 12. It gets whatever it's called, distortion. It gets the utility that makes them actually invulnerable and restock blades. It gets Blade Turn Requiem, which is a block, basically distortion, and blocks and does damage, and also builds blades because you're bleeding the target by doing damage. And it still gets 2 dodges. And it's like, okay, I understand that that's kind of how you balance the class around dodges, invulns, and blocks. But you look at something, again, like Warrior, or even something like Necromancer, that has, I mean, Warrior arguably has some of it with Endure Pain, especially with, like, the Headbutt Endure Pain thing they left in the game. But it doesn't get anything anywhere close to that. Like,
okay, so two comments on that, because I do agree it can become insane really quickly. Like, there does exist...
Let me preface this so I have some context. The reason I hate that is because I really, and again, I'm a little bit opposite to what you like, but I also play at, I think, a lower tier, usually like Plat 1, Plat 2, when I care. I don't like when metas just become all damage burst, and then when you've run out of dodges or blocks or invulns, you run away. You either run away or you're dead on everything.
Yeah.
I hate that.
That is kind of PvP.
It's, well, again, like, if you're really good, that's just how it works, and that's how it will always work. But I don't like it when it's so aggressive like that, and a really good example of that is Daredevil, where it's just, you know, before when you could, you know, I'm pretty sure it still does, like, the Blade Storm would evade, and then they would refresh it, and then they would have 2 dodges, and then they would do it again, and it's just like, and then they would run away, and it's like, I hate fighting this. And I understand that's how Thief plays, but, like, everything played like that, including Mesmer, which I hate. I will not play Power Mesmer because I think it's a bitch way to play. And I understand it's good, but I still think it's a bitch way to fight, because you do all your nuke stuff, you evade a bunch, you do all your nuke stuff again, if they're not dead, you run away. And I think that's stupid.
Though that is the role of a roamer, right?
I know.
I mean, I like it because
if you know what you're doing,
it's very counterable. If you know what you're doing, but it can be especially in like gold and below, like extremely oppressive.
Right.
Like, there's a reason that rifle mech is viable in gold and completely unviable in plat. It's because if people don't know how to play around something, it'll just shred through you, right? Um, but the thing I was going to say is that there is kind of lurking underneath the surface a virtuoso build that can like combo. I think it's like 30 seconds of invulnerability. It's something obscene like that. Like it just doesn't make sense. I mean, granted, you're giving up the opportunity cost. You're not dealing damage while you're invulnerable, but yeah,
That's actually
weird.
a really good point. Where I guess that's okay, but maybe distortion should have a channel or something. Um, kind of how Armor of Earth
So you
does.
can't do like instant stirring it.
Well, distortion you can just press it and you shatter, and then you are invuln while doing damage.
Yeah.
And I like look at my PvP thing is still, even though I played a buttload of Warrior, it's still more than half Mirage, and like that is invuln the class. Because I played that when it had 2 dodges, and I did the same thing in World vs. World, but I played more of a like dancey dually thing that works with that. But if you just play it as, oh, I'm gonna train all of my evades and invulns, and because energy sigils are still 50% in World vs. World, you're literally never gonna hit me. Like, and I'm also gonna do all the power burst damage, so I don't need to build defensive. That's when it gets hard to balance. And
Yeah.
it's, I don't know if invulns all need a trade-off to like that for channeling. Like, what else could they do for invulns? Like, have it sap your health? Like, have it have a health cost? Like,
No, I think it's fine. I actually think that when they made the change, I mean, in PvP specifically, when they made the change that invulns decap the point, I think
that's true.
that
They do that.
makes it fine. I do think
But then you
if
just
there
have
are
everything
too
giving
many
evade or
invulns,
block instead.
yeah. I mean, it could be unfun. It can be unfun to play against. But yeah, like I said, you have the opportunity cost, right? Like you're not dealing damage while you're channeling invulns that you. Obviously, distortion is an outlier,
Right.
but like the virtuoso utility, it's kind of hard to fit in outside of like an extreme
It does
duelist
have
build.
a,
Because
let me check the cooldown. I think it's
it's 60 seconds.
maybe. You're probably right. You probably play it more.
It's been a minute, but I think it's 60. Yeah.
It's actually 40. Blade renewal is 40. It's 60 in PvE. And
Okay.
yeah, that's one of those things that's like, huh? Where it's like,
Yeah, that's weird. You'd think it'd be the other way
well,
around.
I think
But
they balanced it about around being basically a damage thing, but again, like A, it's a channel, so it's never going to be a damage thing, and B, that stupid trait that just gives you blades with no cooldown whenever you bleed things that you take on your power build anyway is in the game. It like ANET keeps doing this thing where they commit to like, they're like, oh, let's design this thing around not having a cooldown. Wait, shit, that's surprisingly really overpowered, and we can't balance this at all, so let's give it a cooldown or even a micro cooldown that completely invalidates it. And it's like, ANET, if you're going to do that, you either need to commit to no cooldown across classes like Purity of Purpose and this, or you just can't do that anymore, and you need to have everything have an internal cooldown, even if it's 1 second or less than 1 second pre-Spellbreaker. So, like, I don't know. It's weird. From a design perspective, I really like things with no cooldown because it's like, oh, I could just design something that, you know, only applies chill, and that's stupid, but I'm bleeding every time I apply chill. That's cool. It's not good, but it's cool. I don't know. It's just numbers again. Numbers tweaking is always very weird, especially on release of things.
absolutely.
Oh, Willbender.
I will say as an aside, I probably have 15 minutes left.
What do we got left?
I
Well,
think
we have
3.
2. We had 2. 3.
Oh,
You're
perfect.
right. Well, we go through Guardian fast because nothing happened with it.
Nothing.
Yeah. Heaven's Palm, more of a damage skill, lethal tempo, lots of PvE changes. Willbender bringing that up. Yeah, Firebrand. So, quick TLDR, what they did. Remove the cooldowns on tomes. They're basically kits with costs now. Very cool. Your Grandmaster now does kind of what I wanted Firebrand to always do, where you don't have to choose a book that you get per se, but you get to choose a trait or a passive that you retain. So it's either the 1, 2, or 3. By picking the Grandmaster trait, you can have all of them. Kind of a trade-off, kind of cool. Big fan that the different pages, at least from a design perspective, have different page costs. Because that,
Yeah.
like they were saying, lets them make a lot of these skills relevant in PvP and World vs. World, whereas before they had to be just useless buttons. Like, if you could just spam, you know, your tome 5 or whatever it was in PvP, it's like, that's not fair.
Yeah. Well, I'm so happy with the Firebrand changes.
They look
I'm sure that
cool.
there are people who aren't happy. And granted, I actually haven't played it yet, admittedly.
Oh yeah,
'cause
baseless speculation. This is great. I haven't either, but
Well,
I'm more
I
excited
just
to.
got bored. I got bored with Firebrand was meta in PvE for like
I have no
7
idea
years.
why.
Oh, well, I got bored with it, and so I started playing other quickness providers.
Yeah.
But I love these changes because it actually opens up the game to be balanced better in the future,
Well, it feels
right?
like a class now.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think this is definitely not the final iteration of this, but it this design concept lets them actually iterate in a way that they can balance the class. So I'm pretty happy with that.
Well, at least to me, pre this Firebrand, it's weird to me. ANET's design, like again, I see the code, man. Like the way they, especially now that they've given us like beta previews and stuff, and especially about like everything in the Discord that leaked with people actually giving them meaningful feedback on a lot of things, and then them changing literally nothing because one guy was in charge
Yeah.
who seemingly didn't care. It's weird when you get things previewed like, okay, here's Bladesworn and it has to swap through Gunsaber to get to it. Why did you design it that way? Here's Harbinger and it accrues Blight but does nothing with the Blight. Why did you design it with that? Like, did you not just have time to finish the potions? That's fine. But then they released Bladesworn where it just, like, has a band-aid fix for that and has nothing. But then Harbinger arguably actually got finished where it does stuff with the Blight. Granted, it probably shouldn't remove Blight by using, like, potions while you're in Shroud, but that's a separate issue. I don't know. There's like give and take with that. That's kind of why I say again, Bladesworn feels unfinished because it's so janky and has a lot of that stuff that I was describing earlier. Whereas Firebrand sort of feels finished to me now,
Yeah, I feel that.
at least conceptually.
I will say, I do think if you play any class enough, you'll see the jank.
Dude,
I don't think any class is without the jank in this game.
I don't know. I watch a lot of balance crap. I don't think anything but Bladesworn has the level of Bladesworn jank. It's just from a design perspective, all of its utilities suck. Like it's
I mean,
so weird.
I've played a lot of Catalyst. God, I feel like Catalyst, while it might be good, is so jank.
Okay, Catalyst is the second one. I think
It's
Catalyst
so
is also
poorly
unfinished.
designed.
Like Catalysts, yes, I will say that the three that felt the most jank to me, and I don't know, I think they were all in the same beta, were Bladesworn, Catalyst, and Willbender. And Willbender only needed a couple things. It's kind of like Spellbreaker, where it was like it wasn't intended to be super complicated.
Yeah.
I think mechanically it's fine, and its animations are fine now, and that's really all they had to do to clear that up, other than make like obviously all the auto trigger traits not trigger every time you hit with something 4 times. But that feels more finished to me. Like I don't think it's at least mechanically like Spellbreaker.
Willbender's fun.
Yeah.
I think like say what you will about it. It's kind of non-existent PvE. But it's just a fun class.
Maybe it will be now. They're bringing it up. Who knows?
Sure.
Dragon Hunter buffs. But yeah, I think that Catalyst and I think that Bladesworn, because they were viable because their numbers were good, right? And then at least in PvP and arguably PvE, I don't think that either of them feels good to play. I don't think that either of them are finished. Maybe we'll get a Bladesworn finishing patch, and then we'll get a Catalyst finishing patch, and then everything will be great. Beast Guardian buffs in PvE, not too exciting. Mechanist updated the audio of the mech. Perfect. Big change, like I mentioned previously. Don't know if that was on stream. Mechanical Genius, now combat attributes. All attributes, not just the power ones. So if you're running support mech, this matters for alacrity giving. Maybe you want to build full concentration now, who knows. Conduit attribute bonuses to the mech now reduced by 50% if it's more than 360 range away for a certain amount of time, which they didn't actually list, which is weird. Apparently it's 6 minutes, but who knows.
6 seconds. It's 6 every...
Yeah, not 6 minutes.
Yeah. And it updates every 3-second interval for some reason. So
it's actually
really,
like 7.5 seconds sometimes.
Yeah,
So it does the check every 6 seconds.
It does no. I think it does the check every 3 seconds, and it lasts for 6 seconds.
That's stupid.
I think.
They need to start hiring programmers for this company.
Well, I really like conceptually what they want to do here. They want to promote skill. If you can,
They want to promote you just either having to build for it or not having to, like, you can't just stay off the boss and do everything with a mortar kit or a rifle.
Yeah, I like don't conceptually have an issue with that. I think that is part of the class fantasy. I think they want to nerf specifically PvE power players that are like AFK and doing a ton of damage and not controlling their mech. And I think that's fine. I actually think power mech is fine now where it is. It doesn't actually do that much damage anymore, and I think it's okay.
You can still play it. Like if I want someone's getting into the game, I could go Gear Mechanism will clear this right.
It's such a good like first class. Yeah. But I think this is the jankiest fucking way to solve this issue.
How would you have done it? Because I don't hate this.
I don't know. I actually like conceptually the idea you can, especially in an open world, like, oh, I'm going to send my mech over there and I'll be over here to do stuff, right? I think that's cool. And to punish someone for doing that feels bad. I don't know how I would have changed it, because it's clear they want to promote skill in the class.
Watch them do this and then have the
pretty low skill.
Like Alacrity actually happen around Druid, and then Druid is just the new mechanism.
Oh no!
Without doing the 300.
Yeah, I don't know how I would have done it, but I just think it's clunky.
I'm a big fan.
And I think it creates a long-term problem, basically, and I don't like that.
Why?
Because you have... They are going to change this in the future. I can almost guarantee that they will retouch this, because it's not fun, right? So they're like creating work for themselves down the line.
But nerfs are never fun.
Yeah, but it's not just that it's a nerf. It's that it's a playable unfun nerf. Have you controlled the mech AI? It is miserable.
Oh no, I just had my mech auto attack. I'm a pleb.
Yeah, but even when you're auto attacking, sometimes it's standing more than 360 from and you're like, I didn't, I pressed my go here skill and it's not there.
Right. There isn't a ground targeted go here mech skill other than the signet.
Yeah. Or like I press the return to me thing and then it like returns to the other side of the boss. Right. And it's like, what? If the AI were better, I think this would be a more okay change. But because the AI is weak, I don't like this change. And I think they should have addressed it some other way.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't hate this, but agree to disagree. That's honestly better that we do. No, this is something I want to get right off the bat. It's really good that we have different philosophies, and this is why I wanted to specifically do the podcast with you. One, you're like the one of 3 people in the guild who care about balance, and 2, I argue with you a lot, and we don't always share the same builds, and we obviously play different stuff, so it's really good to have different opinions. Like, it's okay to have different opinions on the internet. I want to stress that. Fine. It's actually a good thing, but... So we'll go... I'm going to skip to Ellie, just because it's short. Pretty much just PvE changes. They're making Scepter less of a support weapon, more of a offensive weapon for all the game modes, giving like the blind on lightning 2 charges. And now blind, like, you have to hit with one in order to do the other, basically. Dragon's Tooth tracks, probably the coolest change they got. So you have
God, that's so funny. I hate it.
You have this big like impending tooth thing you have to dodge above your head. Actually kind of cool. Don't know how it plays. I haven't tried it. I'm sure I will.
I have tried it. I mean, Fresh Air Weaver, I think specifically they're targeting PvP Fresh Air Weaver with this, right? And I think it's such a fun build. It's always been a really fun build. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the quickest, it's like, you have to be so fast with your fingers to make these combos go off. Yeah, it's fun. I do think forcing the dodge from the other player is kind of trash. Because it's already a class that is asking you to dodge against it so much, right?
Sure.
So to have a thing that you absolutely must dodge, because
Dragon's Tooth does no counterplay other than press your dodge button.
Yeah, I just think it makes it less fun to play against.
Maybe they could have
especially with all these scepter changes. I think they could have just gone with all these other scepter
maybe
changes.
Maybe it just casts faster in a larger area or something.
Yeah. Tracking you forever is crazy. There are so few skills that can do this in PvP.
That's actually something I wanted to bring up with the Sword Warrior thing. So the one thing on Sword, offhand Sword on Warrior, everything's about Warrior. This is a Warrior podcast. Screw balance. So the thing with the offhand Sword, the block sucks. All of the flip skills suck. The throw your sword button is actually really good because Rip has been buffed enough to be overpowered. It actually does really good power damage. It's like as much as a Greatsword F1 or something stupid. And more importantly, actually just hitting somebody with the impale of the throw sword does this thing that I can't think of anything else does. It applies a debuff where they are impaled, which just applies every second cripple and torment to them. And you can't get it off. You can't cleanse that. You cleanse the torment, it just gets applied to you the next second for 5 seconds. Nothing else in the game does that, except for apparently now Dragon's Tooth. So it's just this perpetual damage thing that you're taking. Like, I'm crippled. I cleanse. What's the counterplay? I cleansed it. Or I guess the counterplay is give myself resistance and move with torment. Like, but I can't move because I'm crippled. So it's so weird. And that's why offense sword is good. And that's it.
That's why. But the scepter changes are fun, man. It's just a fun weapon, and I like that they're defining it more. It seems like it's going to be usable in PvE as well. Or more usable, I should say.
I was actually using it as a support weapon on my Sally Tempest, so
now it's less usable for you.
But that's just, again, me. I'm the idiot who was using the toughness and power trait on Warrior. Evasive Arcana, I think this is my outside perspective trait that I'm most excited for, is they're noting bug fixes that are important that have existed in the game forever. Fixed an issue that prevented this trait from triggering Flame Burst while dodging. Very important to me, just from an overall design perspective, that they are fixing things that are relevant and bugged. Lightsworn, what? So that's it, pretty much. Catalyst changes, a few.
Catalyst changes are huge.
I mean, the big one that is the aura thing, right? You can't just cleanse conditions by applying an aura to somebody. It has to be you applying an aura to yourself.
Yeah, and I think that specifically in PvP breaks down
the fire trait is dumb.
What's it called?
Fire.
Yes, I know what you're talking about. But I think that the most problematic thing was that Tempest. So Tempest is the meta support right now, right?
Catalyst so is also doing that.
So if you put them on the same team, they're just they're comboing a little too well.
Okay.
So I think by nerfing this, it's a simple nerf, and I'm into it.
I like it. All right, Engineer.
But it's about to do a lot of damage in PvE. That's the last thing to say.
It needed to. People were crying about it. I mean, everyone.
Yeah.
There's no PvP population. Sure as shit isn't any. There's a world versus world population, but they have the fun game mode, so no one complains about anything. There's no PvP population, or at least it's not as big, and sadly, there's no build crafting population. I'm trying to remedy that, so shout out to the 3 people who care. But my point with that is, most people complaining are in general complaining about PvE.
Yeah, for sure.
And when their thing is good, people tend to not complain about it. So people then bringing up damage on Catalyst after it was nerfed a little, after Snowcrows was using 8 Catalysts to clear an encounter, which is maybe a little bit much. Probably good, at least on the complaining side. So, Engineer, shout out to the Box of Nails buff.
I love it.
Well, the reason I named my podcast Box of Nails, and the reason Cal Cohen likes to make is because Cal Cohen likes to make that joke a lot. And the reason he likes to make that joke a lot is because he talks of a designer that used to argue. He went on this huge rant about how Box of Nails sucks and it needs to be good. And everything, and
it's finally good.
Well, Cal's it's finally usable, or maybe it's got this increased ammunition thing that can immobilize if they were already crippled, which Engineer does have a fair amount of. But the reason it's funny, and I'm sure the reason he thinks it's funny, is this guy went on this huge rant about it's kind of everything needs to be overpowered and Box of Nails sucks. He's like, well, no, not everything needs to be really good. It's just that Box of Nails was maybe an undertuned skill, and that's why he calls it that, and that's why I called my anyway.
That's very funny.
Box of Nails, shout out, getting a little bit of an upgrade. Very cool. A lot of the other skills were already.
It's unironically going to be scary in PvP.
Immobilize is good.
Immobilize is really strong, and there's a combo within the kit, right?
Yes.
You pull into a Box of Nails,
right,
and you 3, and it's that's a lot of damage.
Then you
have to dodge that now. Exactly. Yeah.
Which is another condition and a buttload of damage. So yeah, I don't know. The toolkit skills honestly were already very good. Magnet and undodgeable pull.
And the block.
Yeah, block on demand. Basically, again, Engineers complain about it a lot, but they don't really have cooldowns on their weapon swap if they want it. So always have that access. Rifle burst now fires an piercing projectile. Fix the animation a little bit. Fix for PvE, a little bit of a nerf, but not really. Healing turret again, fixing bugs. Big shout out, massive fan. Fix an issue that caused the overcharge skill to take longer than intended. Very good if you're going to make those auto overcharge, which they did.
I did read something really nasty to an earlier point. The new rifle auto attack.
Is it better somehow?
It's not that it's better, and I think this will get touched almost immediately, but I think that optimally now you get the first hit to go off, then you stow weapon and you first hit. Ironically making like Mechanist DPS probably the hardest spec to play in the whole game.
I love crap. I have people jump into my build, like my streams occasionally, and they're like, yeah, this is actually the highest damage, but you need to like stow cancel Dragon Trigger. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. I mean, I'm cool with like that on some skills.
That's how they're nerfing accessibility mechanists. They're making high tier mechanists. You need to be good, right? Or get out of my group.
Highest APM,
right. Macros and a trackpad. I mean, there's stuff like that in this game. I was talking a little bit with Edmonton, and I talk about it with Ryan occasionally when he gets on. He's arguably the best player in the guild. He's been top 25 without queuing with anybody before. Very, very good, if nothing else, player. But
this is Ryan.
Just Ryan, R-Y-A-N. He would have had top 5 if, win trading in ours thing wasn't a thing. But very talented player, very, 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 very good. Very good build crafter. He's shown me things where if you have the right APM, you can just shoot backwards on Ranger.
Yep.
You can just do that. You can shoot longbow while running in a direction by stow canceling and rotating your character with that bat face. It's impossible to do. Like, he can't do it in fights, but you can do it with macros, or if you don't want to cheat and are really good at the game. But there's stuff like that in this game, so who knows? Maybe it's intentional. Probably not. Scrapper, a little bit of the bringing the power of stuff up, reducing cooldowns of like bypass coding and stuff. Couple Scrapper buffs, nothing too exciting. Scrapper's historically been kind of in the place with Warrior where it's either really overpowered or underpowered. Fun fact just for you, Scrapper in World vs. World is my #1 pick for being broken just because it has one broken thing. And the reason for that, that thing that converts damage into barrier that really should be on Berserker? Because it conceptually fits.
It's on Scrapper.
When you spec into Scrapper, you used to lose vitality, and whenever you would do damage, it automatically gives you barrier.
Yeah.
The reason it's not super noticeable in PvP is because it's only 5% in PvP. It's 10% in PvE. You want to guess what it is in World vs. World?
I'm scared.
15% of your outgoing damage gets converted into barrier for Scrapper. And that means someone with no idea what they're doing can build Berserker Scrapper with a grenade kit, turn on that thing where it auto-tracks your target, and just go to town and have infinite survivability. It is the stupidest number change thing that they need to fix. Anyway, really.
That's funny. I have always felt like it's really bruisery in World v. World. I guess that's it.
Yeah, it's because they're all running Zerker gear, because why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
The only way they could be more broken is if it was a higher number applied to Condi damage. Hollowsmith. So bringing up PvE Hollowsmith a lot. A couple changes for traits. The one that gives you, the Grandmaster that gives you extra heat now applies to more skills. Extra, read all about it. It gives you extra tiers to skills, now applies to a lot of other things, which is really good, like Cauterize and Laserdisc, so that's game mode wide, every game mode. You want to talk a little bit about PvP changes, and that's pretty much the last thing we need to hit?
Yeah.
What'd they do for Hollowsmith and PvP?
I mean, Hollowsmith has been a viable roamer for a patch or two now. Yeah, it's really fun. It's really explosive. I actually think they might want to tone down its damage, like its burst ability, just the tiniest bit. But it's very interesting, and I think it's you're going to see a lot of them, especially in ranked. They're like ranked monsters.
So what they do that matters. Why does this, increasing damage tiers of like all these skills or like slightly buffing grenade kit matter? Actually, grenade kit was last.
Yeah. Well, unironically, I do think the Box of Nails change is pretty dramatic.
Really funny.
Yeah.
Just because it sets up for combos or what?
Exactly, right? Like, especially like a Vindicator is really popular right now. If you pull a Vindicator
okay, yeah,
into Box of Nails and they are immobed, they can't dodge, right? Like it's just a good combo.
Well,
and then
yeah, it's more of that adjusting things on classes affects other classes. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. All of their utilities now have extra effects, so it's like at a high level. If someone is playing well and playing the class to its full effect, they're gonna what is it? The heal skill that cauterize?
Right. Cauterize has never been a good skill or a great skill.
No, it's like 9 conditions now.
Right, but now it's 9 conditions into burning, which basically doesn't exist. It's 1 second of 9 stacks of 1 second of burning. So who cares? And it triggers your tool belt skills. Yeah.
Good. It's just good. They've just overloaded a lot of stuff, and I don't know if it becomes meta in the same way that some classes feel to be like eternally meta roamers. I don't know, but it's certainly viable now, and you should see a lot more of them. And it has two variants actually. There's like a duelist
I was just
variant,
looking at that,
and there's a more roamer oriented variant. I think that's great for the class.
Right, they go full damage and nuke them down. This is very cool. I'm all looking into that Spellbreaker build, but I think we actually managed to make it through the patch notes. I'm sorry I talked for years.
No, this is great.
Warrior.
This is great. This is the Warrior podcast.
Dude, this is a Warrior. Disclaimer, probably try to every just pseudo complain about Warrior, but every one of these will have something like that. But now you know, lots of nuance to this game. Big shout out to Calcohan and everyone else doing these. We're going to try to make this a new regular thing if he wants to, and if I can be bothered, probably like once or twice a month for balance updates and whatnot, because this is fun. This is not what I do normally, and now I don't just have to like scream at my cat all the time and bore him, and bore other people on the internet and self here. So thank you once again to you for
thank you for having me. Seriously, it was fun.
Yeah, we'll talk more. We talk in guild chat a lot, but I don't know. I'll probably not edit my swearing out, but try to tone that down in the future because I do want this to be accessible to everybody, even to like four. It's tough though, man. I get passionate about this stuff, but yeah, I'm super excited to check out the Spellbreaker thing. And honestly, what I'm most excited for this balance patch, I'm gonna end it with this, is that it's happening. That they're previewing these more regularly, actually previewing it for 2 weeks, so that they can get actual feedback that they're seemingly adjusting some stuff on, and more importantly, that it's happening. Because the number one thing I want in this game, aside from it to be fun, is variety as a build crafter. I don't care if my class gets nerfed into the dirt. I don't want that, but I'll find something else to theory craft on. All I want is regular balance cadence, and if they can make that happen, more power to them. Do you have any final thoughts?
Well, just to that, I truly expect that going forward, right? I think Arena has rightfully recognized, or correctly recognized, that part of what makes the game so fun as a horizontal progression game is opening new options for
we have this really good combat system that we're doing nothing with.
Yeah. But yeah, just like frequently bringing builds in and out of the meta just keeps the game fresh in a way that I think it has needed for a really long time. And I'm looking forward to more of it. I'm sure, in 3 months, there's going to be some crazy new build.
Hopefully. I do think, like, Calcohan's a little bit scared because he keeps saying, like, when he was... I don't think they're either allowed to announce things past the end of the year, or they don't have a bounce patch hard scheduled after this because they're, like, seeing how his go now that he's head. Because he kept saying with this one, like, he'd like trail off and then be like, that's something we'll change whenever the next patch is. Like in the next patch, whenever that is.
That's fair.
They don't want to
PR
commit,
talk.
and also we'll see how it goes. But I'm excited. I think you're excited. Hopefully people out there are excited. What are you most excited for? Let me know. I do actually read my comments and care. Not doing this for money, God knows. So talk to me about balance. I could talk about it forever. But yeah, this is Box of Nails, Pseudo, Tyria Tribune. Like, subscribe, whatever that crap. If you want, and more importantly, talk to me about balance, because that's what I care about. Anyway, I will see you in Tyria, and have a great holiday. Cheers!